Have you ever wondered what happens when secret military experiments go terribly wrong, and the truth is buried forever? Tonight, we're stepping into the shadows where governments lie, soldiers disappear, and science crosses lines it was never meant to cross. These films don't just scare you, they whisper forbidden stories straight into your mind, daring you to keep watching. As the secrets unravel, ask yourself, would you want to know the truth if it cost you everything? If you enjoy dark, atmospheric horror like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so you never miss the next hidden story waiting to be uncovered. 1. Scanners. 1981. A hidden government drug creates humans who can shatter minds, yours included. Would you dare listen if someone could hear every thought you've ever tried to bury? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You're standing in a crowded mall, surrounded by noise, faces, everyday life. Suddenly, a man screams, not in fear, but in pain, as his head literally explodes. No monster, no demon, just another human being, staring. This is how Scanners pulls you in, not with a warning, but with a shock that feels personal, almost intimate. From that first moment, the film asks you a quiet, unsettling question. What if the most dangerous weapon was the human mind itself? At the center of this nightmare is a secret military experiment disguised as medicine. A drug meant to help pregnant women. A lie told gently, repeatedly, until an entire generation is born changed, gifted, cursed, hunted. These scanners can hear thoughts, invade minds, and bend others to their will. But here's the disturbing part. The film doesn't treat this power as cool or heroic. It treats it as unbearable. Imagine hearing everyone's thoughts at once, the hatred, the fear, the shame. How long do you think you'd stay sane? As the story unfolds, you're not just watching a battle between scanners. You're witnessing a quiet war between control and freedom. The military wants order, scientists want results, and the scanners? They just want the noise to stop. The film lingers on isolation, lonely men sitting in empty rooms, haunted not by ghosts, but by voices that never leave. It makes you wonder, if the government knew you were different, powerful, unstable, would they protect you, or lock you away? David Cronenberg doesn't rush this story. He lets it breathe, crawl under your skin. Conversations feel tense, almost fragile, as if a single wrong word could trigger violence. And when that violence comes, it's sudden and unforgettable, not flashy, not heroic, just brutal reminders of what happens when science forgets humanity. What makes Scanners truly unsettling isn't the head explosions, it's the idea that this all started as a solution. A well-funded experiment, official paperwork, smiling doctors, no evil laughter, just quiet decisions that spiral into horror. It asks you to reflect. How many real experiments were buried like this? How many mistakes were labeled, classified, and forgotten? So tell me, if you discovered the government created people like this, would you expose the truth, or stay silent to feel safe? And if you were a scanner, would you fight back, or disappear forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'm listening. 2. The Hills Have Eyes, 1977. A family's road trip turns into a nightmare when the land itself reveals what the military tried to erase. Would you survive if the desert remembered everything? Picture this. Endless desert. The sun burning down. Radio static filling the silence. You feel safe because nothing seems alive out there. That's the first lie The Hills Have Eyes tells you, and once you believe it, the film never lets go. This isn't just a story about monsters in the wilderness. It's about consequences. About what happens when the military poisons land, abandons it, and assumes no one will ever come looking. As the family's car breaks down in the middle of nowhere, the desert feels empty, almost peaceful, but emptiness, the film suggests, is never truly empty. Something watches from the rocks. Something shaped by radiation, neglect, and time. These aren't supernatural creatures. They are human, twisted by nuclear testing, forgotten by the same system that created them. And that reality makes the horror sink deeper. Because if this can happen here, where else could it happen? The film doesn't rush to reveal its horrors. It lets dread grow slowly. Like heatstroke, you sense that the land is hostile long before the violence begins. When it does, it's raw, ugly, and deeply uncomfortable. There's no heroic music, no sense of adventure, only panic, screams, and the horrifying realization that help will never come. Watching it, you're forced to ask yourself, if the government caused this, who's really responsible for what happens next? What makes The Hills Have Eyes unforgettable is how it mirrors its characters. As the family is pushed to the edge, they begin to change. Fear turns into rage, survival demands brutality, and suddenly, the line between victim and monster starts to blur. The desert doesn't just expose the military's secret, it strips away civility itself. The question becomes disturbing. How different are we, really, when survival is all that's left? There's a cruel irony at the heart of this film. The mutants were created by experiments meant to protect a nation. Yet the people who suffer are civilians, ordinary families, children, travelers who trusted the road. No warnings, no signs, just silence. The movie feels like a warning whispered too late. What you bury doesn't stay buried. It waits. As the sun sets over the hills, you're left with a heavy thought. The real horror isn't the violence, it's the idea that this place exists because someone signed papers, ran tests, and walked away. So let me ask you, if you discovered a place like this was real, would you want to know? Or would you rather keep driving, pretending the desert is empty? Share your thoughts. This story isn't finished without yours. 3. The Boys from Brazil, 1978. A whispered conspiracy reveals that evil doesn't die. It waits to be reborn. What if history's greatest monster was planned to return, on purpose? Imagine discovering that the past isn't finished with us. That somewhere, quietly, patiently, someone is trying to press rewind on humanity itself. The Boys from Brazil doesn't begin with screams or blood, it begins with a rumor. The kind that sounds too insane to be real. And that's exactly why it's terrifying. Because once you lean in, once you start listening, the idea refuses to let go. This film draws you into a shadowy world where science, obsession, and military-era thinking collide. Former architects of war don't vanish when the war ends, they adapt. They hide behind laboratories, paperwork, and polite conversations. The horror here isn't loud, it's chillingly calm. Cloning, genetics, controlled environments, all discussed with the cold logic of men who believe they're correcting history rather than repeating it. And you're left wondering, how many atrocities were committed by people who thought they were right? As the story unfolds, it feels like following a trail of breadcrumbs across continents. Each discovery tightens the knot in your stomach. Children living ordinary lives, families unaware they're part of something vast and monstrous. And hovering over it all is the idea that evil isn't just a person, it's a pattern. One that can be studied, copied, and intentionally recreated. Would you recognize it if it lived next door? What makes The Boys from Brazil so disturbing is how plausible it feels. There are no supernatural forces here, no demons to blame, just human ambition, fear of change, and an obsession with control. The film asks a dangerous question without ever saying it out loud. If science can recreate the body, can it recreate the soul? And if it can't, what kind of monster does that leave behind? There's an unsettling intimacy to the horror. Violence isn't constant, but when it arrives, it feels deliberate, surgical. Every death carries the weight of secrecy, as if the world itself must not know what's happening. The tension builds not from action, but from realization. From the moment you understand the plan, you feel complicit just for knowing. And that's when the film truly sinks its claws in. By the end, you're not relieved, you're disturbed in a quieter way. The kind that lingers. It makes you think about legacy, about how ideas survive longer than people. So let me ask you this. If you had the power to stop a horror before it fully existed, would you act, even if it meant crossing a moral line yourself? And do you believe evil is born, or carefully engineered? Share your thoughts below. This is one experiment that deserves to be questioned. 4. Deathdream, 1974. A fallen soldier comes home from war, but something followed him back. Would you open the door if the person you love no longer felt alive? The knock at the door should have been impossible. The telegram already came. The uniform was folded away. Grief had settled in, heavy and final, and yet, he's standing there, silent, pale, smiling just enough to break your heart. Deathdream doesn't shock you with spectacle, it unsettles you with hope. The most dangerous emotion of all. Because once you believe a miracle has happened, you'll forgive almost anything. This film feels like a quiet nightmare whispered in a suburban living room. The war is officially over, but it refuses to stay overseas. Whatever the military did to this young soldier, whatever experiments or chemical enhancements they exposed him to, didn't end with his death. It followed him home, stitched into his body, buried in his eyes. And the scariest part? His mother doesn't want answers. She just wants her son back. Wouldn't you? As days pass, something feels wrong. Not loud wrong, subtle wrong. He doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep. He watches people the way predators watch prey. The house grows colder, quieter, like it's holding its breath. The film invites you to lean in, to notice small details, to feel the tension build slowly. And it asks a painful question without ever spelling it out. How much horror would you ignore if it meant avoiding grief? What makes Deathdream unforgettable is how deeply human it is. The military experiment here isn't shown in labs or files, it's shown in consequences. A boy turned into something else. A family forced to pretend nothing changed. Violence creeps in not as action, but as inevitability. Every moment feels like a countdown, and you can sense that love itself is becoming dangerous. There's an aching sadness beneath the terror. This isn't a monster movie. It's a story about broken promises, promises made by governments, by generals, by anyone who said the war would end and everything would be fine. The film quietly accuses the system that created soldiers and discarded them, experimenting with lives and calling it necessity. Watching it, you might feel uncomfortable asking yourself, how many real, death dreams came home quietly, never spoken about? By the end, the horror feels deeply personal. It's not about what the soldier became, it's about what everyone else allowed him to become. Silence, denial, fear of truth. So here's the question I want to leave with you. If someone you loved returned changed beyond recognition, would you confront the truth, or cling to the lie that keeps your heart intact? Let me know in the comments. This is one story where your answer matters. 5. The Keep, 1983. When soldiers unlock an ancient fortress, they awaken a force no army can command. Would you trust weapons when the enemy isn't human? There are places that feel wrong the moment you step inside them. The Keep begins with that feeling: thick stone walls, endless shadows, and silence that presses against your ears. Nazi soldiers arrive believing this is just another position to occupy, another structure to control. But this fortress doesn't care about uniforms or orders. It has been waiting, and the moment the soldiers break its rules, something ancient starts to breathe again. This film feels like a slow descent into forbidden territory, where military arrogance collides with forces far older than war itself. The soldiers treat the Keep like conquered land, dismantling symbols they don't understand, mocking warnings carved into stone centuries ago. And you can almost feel the tension building, as if the walls themselves are watching. The horror creeps in quietly, through strange deaths, through whispers in the dark, until it becomes impossible to deny that this is no ordinary battlefield. What makes the Keep haunting isn't just the supernatural presence, it's the mindset that awakens it. These men believe everything can be studied, weaponized, or dominated. That belief feels uncomfortably close to military experimentation. The idea that power comes from pushing boundaries, no matter the cost. But here, the experiment isn't chemical or biological, it's existential. What happens when modern warfare meets something it can't classify? As the story unfolds, fear spreads among the soldiers like a contagion. Guns become useless, authority dissolves, orders sound meaningless in the dark. The Keep strips everyone down to their most basic instincts: survive, escape, deny. Watching this, you might feel a strange shift in sympathy. The monsters are terrifying, yes, but the men who unleashed them are disturbingly familiar. How many times has history repeated this mistake? Assuming control equals understanding? There's a dreamlike quality to the film, almost hypnotic. Scenes blur together, logic bends, and you're left questioning what is real and what is myth. That uncertainty becomes part of the horror. You're not just watching soldiers die, you're watching certainty collapse. Science, strategy, and ideology all fail when faced with something that exists beyond human logic. And that failure feels deeply unsettling. At its core, the keep is about boundaries, moral, historical, spiritual, that should never be crossed. The military sees a structure. The ancient world sees a prison. And once the door is opened, there's no going back. The film leaves you with a heavy question long after the credits roll. Are there things humanity was never meant to uncover? No matter how powerful we become. So let me ask you, if you were ordered to investigate a place everyone warned you about, would you follow commands, or listen to fear? And do you believe true evil is something we create, or something we accidentally set free? Share your thoughts below. This is one secret that refuses to stay buried. 6. Below. 2002, trapped inside a wartime submarine. Sailors face something unseen in the depths. Would you trust your crew when the ocean itself turns against you? There's a special kind of fear that only exists underwater. No sky, no horizon, just steel walls, creaking bolts, and miles of black pressure pressing in from every side. Below drops you straight into that suffocating silence, where a World War II submarine becomes both sanctuary and coffin. At first, the danger seems familiar: enemy ships, depth charges, survival tactics. But then something changes, and you feel it before you understand it. As the submarine rescues survivors from a sunken vessel, the mood shifts almost imperceptibly. Strange noises echo through the corridors. Equipment malfunctions without explanation. Men begin to behave off. The sea feels less like an environment and more like a presence. Watching this, you might catch yourself holding your breath, as if oxygen itself is becoming scarce. The film pulls you inward, forcing you to share the crew's paranoia and dread. What makes Below especially unsettling is the sense that the mission itself was never clean. Beneath the surface of wartime duty lies something darker: classified objectives, unspoken experiments, and a willingness to push men past their breaking point for the sake of results. The submarine becomes a floating laboratory, not of science, but of human limits. How much fear can a person endure before reality fractures? The horror creeps in slowly, like seawater through a cracked hull. You're never sure whether what's happening is supernatural, psychological, or the result of military secrecy gone wrong. And that uncertainty is the real terror. Isolation magnifies everything: guilt, trauma, suspicion. Every whisper sounds like an accusation. Every shadow feels alive. You start to wonder, if command knew this might happen, would they still send these men down there? As tensions rise, the crew begins to turn on itself. Authority weakens, trust erodes, survival instincts clash with orders drilled into them by the military. The film asks a brutal question without ever saying it aloud. When survival is at stake, does duty still matter? Watching their fear spiral, you may find yourself questioning what you'd do in their place. Would you follow protocol, or abandon it to stay alive? There's a haunting sadness beneath the suspense. These men are young, exhausted, far from home, carrying invisible scars from a war that demands silence and obedience. Whatever lurks in the depths seems to feed on that emotional weight. It doesn't just attack bodies, it exploits guilt, regret, and unresolved fear. And suddenly, the submarine feels less like a machine and more like a confessional with no escape. By the time the truth begins to surface, it's too late to turn back. The ocean doesn't forgive, neither does secrecy. Below leaves you with a lingering chill and a final, uncomfortable thought. How many horrors have been hidden at the bottom of the sea? Sealed away by military orders and silence? So let me ask you, if you were trapped underwater and something unexplainable began to happen, would you trust your senses, or assume the truth was being buried from you? Share your thoughts below. Down there, every secret has a price. 7. The Bunker. 2001. A group of soldiers hides underground. But the bunker remembers every secret. Would you stay inside when the walls know your sins? The war outside is loud, chaotic, familiar. The real terror in the bunker begins when the door closes and silence takes over. Thick concrete, flickering lights, narrow corridors that feel tighter with every step. This is supposed to be a safe place, a temporary shelter for exhausted soldiers. But almost immediately, you sense it. This bunker isn't protecting them. It's observing them. At first, fear feels rational. Supplies are low, nerves are frayed, orders are unclear, but then strange things begin to happen. Sounds echo from empty rooms. Shadows move where no one stands. Men start arguing over memories they don't share. The bunker seems to dig into their minds, pulling buried guilt to the surface. Watching this, you might feel a creeping unease, as if the film is slowly sealing you in alongside them. What makes the bunker so unsettling is how it blends military secrecy with psychological decay. These soldiers aren't just hiding from the enemy, they're hiding from what they've done. Experiments, executions, morally questionable orders carried out in the name of duty. The bunker becomes a pressure chamber, amplifying every lie and regret. It asks a disturbing question. What happens when there's no enemy left to blame? And only conscience remains? The horror here isn't flashy. It's intimate. Conversations stretch uncomfortably long. Faces linger in close-up, eyes darting, hands shaking. You can feel paranoia infecting the group, spreading faster than fear itself. The film makes you doubt everything. Are the supernatural elements real? Or is this the inevitable result of prolonged confinement and suppressed trauma? And then another thought creeps in. What if the military knew this would happen? As the bunker tightens its grip, authority collapses, rank loses meaning, discipline erodes. The structure designed to control soldiers instead strips them bare. There's a cruel irony in that. Military systems are built on obedience and silence. Yet here, silence becomes unbearable. Secrets demand to be heard. The bunker doesn't let anyone forget who they were before the uniform, or what they did while wearing it. There's a suffocating sense that escape may not even be possible. Not because the exit is blocked, but because leaving would mean facing the truth. The film quietly suggests that some places are built not just to shelter bodies, but to contain horrors that can't be erased. And once you step inside, you become part of that containment. By the end, the bunker feels less like a war film and more like a confession whispered in the dark. It leaves you unsettled, questioning where the real evil lies, in the walls, or in the men who occupy them. So let me ask you, if a place forced you to confront every secret you've buried, would you endure it, or break trying to escape? And do you believe the military hides monsters underground, or creates them there? Share your thoughts in the comments. Some truths don't stay silent forever. 8. The Objective. 2008. A covert military mission crosses into forbidden ground. Would you keep following orders when reality itself starts to break apart? At first, it feels like just another classified operation. Desert heat, tight formations, radios crackling with commands that don't invite questions. The Objective lulls you into that familiar rhythm of modern warfare, where danger is expected and fear is manageable. But then something slips. A sound that doesn't belong. A moment that doesn't line up. And suddenly, you realize this mission was never meant to be understood, only obeyed. The team is sent deep into hostile territory, guided by intelligence that feels deliberately vague. The land stretches endlessly, ancient and indifferent, as if it has watched armies come and go for centuries. Slowly, the environment begins to feel wrong. Time bends, distances lie, shadows linger too long. Watching this, you may feel the same creeping doubt as the soldiers. Are we being watched, or tested? What makes The Objective deeply unsettling is how it frames military control as a kind of experiment. Orders keep coming, even when reality no longer makes sense. The mission persists despite mounting evidence that something far beyond human understanding is at play. The soldiers are trained to suppress instinct, to trust command over their own senses. And the film quietly asks, what happens when that training becomes a liability? As the group presses forward, fear doesn't explode, it fractures. Each soldier reacts differently. Some cling harder to protocol. Others begin to unravel. Arguments erupt over what's real, what's imagined, and what they're not allowed to question. The horror grows not from monsters, but from uncertainty. You're never given solid ground, and that instability seeps into your bones. Just like the characters, you start doubting your own perception. There's an almost hypnotic quality to the film. Scenes feel disjointed, dreamlike, as if the soldiers have stepped into a space where logic doesn't apply. The military's presence feels small here, insignificant. Weapons are useless. Authority is hollow. Whatever force they've encountered doesn't attack in conventional ways. It observes, it manipulates, and it seems disturbingly familiar with human behavior, as if this isn't the first unit to wander into its reach. Beneath the surface, the objective feels like a warning. About blind obedience. About secret programs that push boundaries without understanding the consequences. The soldiers are expendable variables in a test they never consented to. And as the truth inches closer, you sense that survival may depend not on strength, but on the ability to disobey. By the end, the film leaves you with more questions than answers, and that's its power. It doesn't explain the phenomenon. It lets it linger, unresolved, like a classified file stamped "Do Not Disclose." You're left wondering how many missions like this were erased, rewritten, or buried under layers of secrecy. So here's the question for you. If you were on a mission where reality itself began to fracture, would you trust your training, or your fear? And do you believe the military investigates the unknown to protect us, or to control it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Some objectives were never meant to be completed. 9. Outpost, 2008. A mercenary mission uncovers a forgotten Nazi experiment. Would you keep fighting if death itself refused to stay dead? The job sounds simple enough. Good pay, no questions. Just head into a remote war zone and secure an abandoned military site. That's how Outpost hooks you, by pretending this is just another dirty contract in a dirty world. But from the moment the team reaches the outpost, you feel it. The air is wrong. Too still, too heavy. Like the ground itself is holding a breath it never plans to release. The outpost isn't just abandoned, it's preserved. Rusted machinery hums faintly, walls are etched with symbols no one wants to translate, and the silence feels deliberate. These mercenaries are used to danger, but this place doesn't threaten them openly. It watches, and as night falls, the past begins to wake up. Footsteps echo where no one stands. Shapes move just beyond the edge of vision. Watching this, you might feel the same creeping dread. Some experiments were never meant to end. What makes Outpost especially disturbing is the slow realization that this isn't a battlefield, it's a laboratory. A secret Nazi project buried under layers of concrete and denial. Soldiers weren't trained here, they were repurposed, stripped of humanity and reforged into something obedient, something eternal. The horror doesn't rush at you, it marches. Methodical and unstoppable. And you start to understand that bullets won't solve this problem. The mercenaries react the only way they know how, with aggression. Denial, dark humor, but bravado crumbles fast when faced with an enemy that doesn't feel pain and doesn't die. Fear creeps into their voices. Arguments flare, trust erodes. The film thrives in these moments, where hardened killers are reduced to panicked survivors. It forces you to ask, if your enemy can't be killed, what does survival even mean? There's a grim irony at the heart of Outpost. These men are modern soldiers for hire, fighting ghosts of a regime obsessed with perfect, immortal warriors. Different era, same mindset, power at any cost. The film quietly suggests that military experimentation never really disappears, it just changes uniforms. Watching the mercenaries stumble through this nightmare, you might wonder how many such sites were erased from history. Sealed away and labeled, classified. The atmosphere is relentless. Darkness swallows the screen. Sounds come from nowhere. And the undead soldiers, cold, disciplined, relentless, feel less like monsters and more like a warning. This is what happens when ideology meets unchecked experimentation. The result isn't victory. It's an endless war that never learned how to stop. By the time the truth fully surfaces, escape feels almost pointless. The outpost isn't just a place, it's a legacy. One that refuses to stay buried. The film leaves you with a chilling thought. What if some wars are designed to continue forever? Long after everyone forgets why they began. So let me ask you, if you discovered a forgotten experiment like this, would you try to destroy it, or would you run and hope someone else deals with it? And do you believe the worst military secrets are hidden underground, or already walking among us? Share your thoughts below. Some outposts were never meant to fall. 10. Frankenstein's Army, 2013, deep in the frozen ruins of World War II. A Soviet patrol uncovers a nightmare factory where Nazi science refuses to die, and what they wake up might follow you long after the war ends. Would you keep watching, or run? At first, Frankenstein's army feels like a war story you think you already know. Snow crunches under boots, rifles are held tight, and fear is something soldiers pretend not to feel. But the film quickly leans closer to you, almost whispering, "You've never seen this battlefield before." And it's right, because this isn't about bullets and strategy. It's about what happens when human ambition cuts itself open and stitches the pieces back together wrong. As the soldiers push deeper into an abandoned bunker complex, the air changes. The silence isn't peaceful, it's watchful. You can almost hear the walls breathing. Then come the creatures, twisted, mechanical, painfully human. These are not fast jump-scare monsters. They move with weight, with history, with suffering welded into steel. Each one looks like a question no one should have asked. How far is too far when winning a war? What makes the horror sink in is the feeling that these experiments weren't created in madness alone, but in cold, rational confidence. Someone believed this was progress. Someone signed off on it. And suddenly, you're not just scared of what's on screen. You're thinking about how easily people justify horrors when they hide them behind uniforms and orders. That's the real hook of the film. It doesn't scream at you. It stares back, daring you to look away. The found footage style pulls you closer, as if you're another soldier holding the camera. Heart racing, hands shaking. You're not watching from a safe distance. You're inside the corridors, turning corners you already regret. And when the mad scientist finally appears, calm and proud of his work, it's unsettling in a quiet way. He doesn't see monsters. He sees achievements. How does that make you feel? Angry? Uneasy? Or disturbingly curious? Frankenstein's army isn't perfect, but it's memorable because it commits fully to its nightmare. It asks you to imagine a version of history where science and cruelty shook hands and never let go. And when the credits roll, you might catch yourself thinking, if this was hidden once, what else could be buried out there? So let me ask you, do you see this film as pure exploitation horror? Or as a dark warning wrapped in steel and flesh? Which creature disturbed you the most? And why? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear how this one stayed with you. And as we step out of that frozen bunker from Frankenstein's army, the echoes of these films follow us into the dark, from hidden labs to forgotten battlefields. Every story tonight asked the same quiet question: what happens when power is tested in secret? Some experiments escape the screen, others may still be watching us. Which movie unsettled you the most? And why did it linger in your mind? Tell me in the comments. If you felt that chill, don't forget to like, share this journey, and subscribe, because there are always more secrets waiting to be uncovered.